Toy Chat is not a children's channel. This video is intended for adult gift givers and collectors. Hey guys, welcome to Toy Chat. This is Max.
And Sang.
And we are returning to our Collector's Corner podcast. You know, there hasn't been an episode of this in a bit, but it's just our little opportunity to chat about hot topics in the doll and toy industry involving some of our favorite brands. And today we are going to be discussing officially the 2022 live action Monster High movie, which is officially out for the public to consume and enjoy. We watched it a couple days after it came out. It premiered on Nickelodeon on October 6th and also is available to stream on Paramount Plus, which is where we watched it. So we're going to kind of format this in, as we often do for these podcast episodes, is a bit of an informal discussion, but we're kind of going to start with a non-spoiler summary. That's going to be kind of the brief initial section of this podcast, and then the latter half of it, we're going to dive straight into kind of some key things we want to discuss in terms of spoilers. So we'll definitely give you guys a spoiler warning before we jump into any of that. But kicking straight off, obviously there have been many Monster High movies in the past, all of them animated. So this is the first official live action Monster High movie. There's been a lot of talk, leading up to it. Obviously, Monster High is a very beloved, popular franchise. And of course, they very recently made this huge comeback with Gen 3, with new dolls and, products, which of course, many of which we've been reviewing on our channel. And there's more to come, so stay tuned. But the movie centers very much around Claudine. That's something to note right away is, it's interesting. We've kind of discussed how every generation it feels like kind of a different main character. Like the main character of Gen 1 was kind of Frankie, and then the main character of Gen 2 was more Draculaura, and it seems like Gen 3 is more like Claudine is the main character.
Yeah, at least, from in the movie standpoint, it seems like Frankie's kind of, not Frankie, it seems like Claudine's kind of the new girl in town. You're following her story, which is, from the trailer, we're not spoiling anything. It's very interesting how that turns out. I wonder if there's going to be another reboot, if who's going to take the lead.
Yeah, and so, the premise out the gate, these are the things you learn in the first 10 minutes of the film. Claudine, as many people already know by now, it's been discussed a lot on, Instagram and on social media. Claudine as a character now is half human, half werewolf, which is an update from prior generations. And she has been accepted to Monster High, which, as it's always been, is a school where, monsters gather and can learn all the monstery things they need to know in the monster world. And the movie is, of course, it's a movie musical. So, it plays out as you would expect a musical to play out. And a lot of the central storyline focuses on, Claudine kind of navigating life at Monster High, being half human, half werewolf. As many folks know by now as well, because these are all things that were revealed in the trailer. Of course, the central three characters still being Claudine, Frankie Stein, and Draculaura, each kind of dealing with their respective struggles. You have Claudine, who's half human. You have Draculaura, who we all know now is practicing witchcraft. And Frankie kind of navigating being among people in general, because they are only, it's something days old. They're like under.
They're recently made.
Yes. So that's actually a really fun thing with Frankie. I also want to say off the bat, I think Frankie was a highlight of the film. I think Frankie is an incredibly cute, fun, lovable, funny character. I would say Frankie was my favorite in the film.
Yeah, just going off of that, I think if you are a original Monster High fan, there are some changes. Like, again, pretty much all their backgrounds have slightly changed and what their motivations have changed. So if you are very attached to the original characters, you might not particularly like all these changes, but I think if you go into this movie with an open mind, that this is, a reboot, it is a pretty fun film.
I think we've sort of touched on some of these topics in our reviews of the dolls. Some of the changes to the original characters I'm perfectly content with. I know we've learned now too that Monster High definitely was going to kind of expand inclusion and diversity in Gen 3, and that is definitely reflected in the live action movie. A lot of everyone has, been discussing by now. One of the key updates, of course, to Frankie's character is that Frankie is now a non-binary character who uses they, them pronouns, and they are played by Cece Balagot, an actor who in real life uses he, they pronouns. Draculaura is now half Taiwanese. I should say some of this information may be different across the live action movie canon versus the animated series canon. I know in the movie, Draculaura is played by a Filipina actress, and Claudine, in addition to being, half human in the movie, the character has been confirmed to be Afro-Latina, which I believe we first learned that in the animated music video that came out. They don't really very explicitly address that in the film, but yeah, it's just, I think a lot of these things kind of taking different steps to make the Monster High cast, diverse, and for the most part, I personally think it works. I think it makes the cast a lot more diverse without feeling like it doesn't make sense or it's forced or anything like that, in my opinion. Definitely, as Sang said out the gate, I think people who are very attached to Monster High Gen 1, we should kind of preface this by saying, as avid of Monster High collectors as Sang and I are, our main attachment to that franchise was the dolls. We started collecting the dolls before we even checked out or any of the animation or movies or anything like that. And for the most part, to be honest with you, even though, we got into Ever After High first via the animated series, we didn't really follow the Monster High animated series, to tell you the truth, super closely. It just wasn't as big of a part of our attachment to the brand compared to the dolls, which I know is very, very different from a lot of other Monster High fans out there. So I think we went into this not having, and I mean, granted, we're definitely familiar with the voices, the overall overarching storylines and important plot points, stuff like that from the original animation. We're definitely aware.
And we also reviewed Gen 2, the film too.
Yes.
That was, yeah.
Yes, we did. I think that, and I mean, I know we've been seeing a lot of negativity surrounding this film. I mean, I don't know if you just hop on the Nickelodeon and Paramount, socials and stuff like that, people are very upset, I think, about the fact, they're making comments they really dislike how much the characters' personalities have changed and how they're completely different from Gen 1, or they're saying the movie looks very low budget, or, saying that the costuming doesn't look good. The kind of the way I want to respond to that is, number one, I think in terms of what you expect when a series is being rebooted, because again, this is a full reboot. It's the same as the Gen 2 reboot. There's a new canon, the storyline is rewritten, some of the characters are different. These characters, of course, I think they've undergone probably for the most part more radical changes compared to Gen 2. But to me, I think a lot of the characters, I think especially when you look at Cleo, Claudine, Frankie in the movie, I think they're the kind of the heart and the integrity of the Gen 1 character, in my opinion, in this movie stayed pretty similar. The biggest change to me was Draculaura. Draculaura, I think, was basically completely rewritten as a brand new character. She's not really seen as this, kind of very sweet, innocent gothic Lolita, cute pink vampire. She's still a cute pink vampire, but she's very much now kind of a sassier, more assertive, headstrong character. So she, I think, experienced the biggest change in terms of personality.
Yeah,
Well, there's another case that we'll get to, but
yeah, I mean, when your main three are all, two of them are already newcomers to Monster High, you can't have all three of them just be deer in the headlights, characters. So one of them has to evolve into more of a assertive personality, and I think that kind of been transferred to the new version of Draculaura, where she's been around this universe a lot longer than these two other characters that they introduced. So which I'm fine with, and I think I like the new version of Draculaura. I think she's still fun.
Definitely. The other comment to make in terms of folks saying the movie just looks really low budget and quote unquote the Party City comments and stuff like that. I have to be really honest with y'all. At least for me, I have a specific set of expectations when I'm walking into, a made for TV, made for streaming movie that is working with a certain budget, and it's not a Marvel movie with a massive VFX team and, millions and millions of dollars to spend. I think for what I expect of, essentially a made for TV movie on that platform to the Nickelodeon network, it was pretty much within the realm of what I expected in terms of quality and budgetary and costuming look.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind, this is a risk the studio took and the creative team. If it does well, of course, the next film will be a much higher budget production. We're not huge musical fans, but I remember High School Musical, the first one, was pretty similarly budgeted.
Yeah.
And then there was a huge shift in the budget for the second one. And of course, the third one was a phenomenon. Well, the
theatrical.
Yeah,
release,
it was a full theatrical. Yeah, I just remember going to see High School Musical 3, and it was like day and night from 2 to 3. It's just different production. Yeah.
Well, and even theatrical releases, like the first Twilight compared to the later movies. As Sang said, it's, they know they're coming back with a brand that had a big fan base, but they are taking a risk, and so of course they work with what they have out the gate, and if there will be a sequel, it might then the budget might go up even more.
And I think they spent their money and their time well in the aspects that counts. Like I think the character, at least the three main characters are wonderfully cast.
Yeah. I mean, something that we watched it with our friend Michael, and kind of something that all of us agreed on is a overall highlight of the movie. And I mean, I've even been noticing even people who are hating on, the aesthetics or the character changes and everything will even make comments like this, is that the music of the movie was a consistent highlight. I would say the main cast in particular, the actors playing Frankie, Claudine, and Draculaura, Mia Harris, Cece Balagot, and Nia Jameson, they are great singers. They all have beautiful voices. Three of Us is a bop. We talked a lot about how it sounds like early Little Mix, great harmonizing. The final outro song, No Apologies, is good. They hired actors who can sing. Like these young actors have really nice voices, which that is not something you often get in musicals like this. So we really appreciated that. There's some bops. So even if you're skeptical of the film, you might at least want to check out the soundtrack.
Yeah. The film is definitely a recommendation from me. I think it is a fun film, even if you're not into the Monster High universe. I think it's a made-for-TV film, but it kind of does engross you into that universe and introduce you to this, these characters in the school. And there's changes that are good and bad, but I think overall, I would recommend to see it. Like I know our friend who watched it with us, he wants to see it again. Yeah, but of course he's much bigger into musical, and I'm not. And I still enjoyed the film.
Yeah, I would say ultimately, if you are an OG Monster High fan who is very attached to the personalities and the storyline of the original animation, and you're just not vibing with the idea of these characters kind of being reintroduced and kind of new spins on who they are and where they come from, this movie might not be for you. But I think if you're open to just something new and something fresh, and again, we already gave you guys a preface of kind of where Sang and I are coming from with, you know, our history with, you know, Monster High animation and movies and stuff. I mean, obviously the Gen 1 animation is still right there for everyone to continue enjoying. You know, it was recently the back catalog was like recently added to Paramount Plus. So if you want to restream the old movies on there, you can. I don't think this movie will be for everyone within the Monster High fandom who is an adult collector, who's very attached to, you know, or who is very attached to the OG animation. But I think if you're open to something new, I would definitely recommend giving it a try. I think in terms of kids and young people or people experiencing the brand for the very first time, I do think it'll have a pretty comparable appeal to, you know, similar concepts and franchises before it, like, you know, Descendants, High School Musical, so on and so forth. I think kids will have a lot of fun with it. And again, because the music is so catchy, I think there will be something, you know, for them to connect with there as well. And of course, you know, animated stuff and kids stuff, yeah, they're always trying to sell toys and they're always trying to loop it into, you know, products and stuff like that. But I do think this film ultimately has a lot of positive messages to send, you know, that will be, I think, good for kids and stuff like that. So from here, we'll go ahead and jump into just a few of the spoiler, you know, kind of the spoiler talk. So consider this your spoiler warning. If you have not watched the film, tune out now, go watch it, and then come back at this point, because we are going to be getting into some spoilers now. Off the bat, who turned out being like the villain? It was both like, oh wow, and pretty predictable at the same time. It was a really interesting way of incorporating, of course, an existing character, Holt, Hyde, and Jackson Jekyll, without actually incorporating them. It was just they incorporated, I guess, what would have been his father, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Yeah, because Jackson Jekyll was the human form. Yeah, which is kind of interesting. Does this mean we're not gonna get Holt and Hyde, or are they gonna just like a younger brother or something? Because now that he's relegated to a teacher / villain in this version, I'm very curious. Yeah, are they just not gonna do those returning characters or not? Yeah, or is that a hint that he could be included later? I don't know. I mean, we did also check out the food fight episode of the animated series that has been uploaded to YouTube, the new animated series for Gen 3, and it seems like that follows a very, very similar but maybe slightly different canon well, I mean, from the movie. Yeah, well, the animated series, no one knows that Draculaura is a witch. Yeah, so this is spoilers for the animated series. Spoilers for everything. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, I guess maybe it's the same kind of like concept, but not the same like timeline. Yeah. It was really funny. We were talking about how much this movie reminded us of Harry Potter. Like the Professor Quirrell Voldemort reveal. It's something that to a certain extent you see coming from a mile away. It's also very interesting and very telling that his song is the song that references you know, Jekyll and Hyde. But that whole confrontation, though, it was wrapped up a little too quickly. It was very we're just gonna look at my phone. Okay, and you I think the resolution of the final conflict was a little rushed, and I didn't love how he looked in that like evil form. You know what? He looked like Ryan Reynolds in the buff, Free Guy. Yeah. In Free Guy, yeah. Yeah, the really buff. Yeah, it's fine. You know, once again, it's the best. We need to adjust our expectations. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I thought that reveal was predictable, but again, the fact that he goes by Holt was surprising. Yeah. Oh, okay. So his name is Edward Hyde Jr.
So he's not, it doesn't go by Halt. So yeah, there's possibly Halt can show up as like a younger brother or something.
I mean, I'm kind of curious if this is going to carry over into like the dolls and the animated series and stuff, because they didn't touch on this at all in the one episode of animation they've uploaded. But Claudine being a thing with Deuce now instead of Cleo, because in the movie's storyline, Cleo and Deuce have broken up. A bit of an issue that we had is, you know, obviously we've seen advertisements of, you know, some of these other, you know, in addition to the main three, there's like, oh, these other characters returning, and, you know, some of them are fan favorites, and people are like, oh my gosh, like, you know, Gulia is going to be in this movie, and Abby Abominable is going to be in this movie, and it was a little disappointing to see, like, Abby in particular felt like an extra. Like Abby was barely.
Well, she had a lot of screen time though, without having any lines.
Yeah, she didn't speak. She didn't really speak. And on the opposite end of that spectrum, Gulia speaks. You know, we had kind of talked about before that we were kind of hoping she would be like a non-verbal character that would have been, I think, just a really nice and unique, you know, inclusive thing to include. It also would have been more faithful to how she was in Gen 1. In addition to Draculaura, I would say Gulia is the most changed from the original canon. She was kind of just like, it felt like she was kind of like a comic relief character, and really the only zombie-ish thing about her was that she slept in the ground at a tombstone and popped up to say things.
Yes.
Right?
I thought the graveyard was forbidden, but she sleeps there in the film.
Yeah.
Seems like the side characters don't get a lot of characterization. They're kind of one note. Laguna ended up being kind of the stand-in for what I was hoping for Gulia, because she was kind of like Cleo's sidekick. And yeah, it wasn't kind of like what I wanted Laguna to be in this version, but you know, hopefully maybe the next film they can do better with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a foundation laid out there for Laguna to actually be a really fun character, and they did something similar in the food fight episode of the animation, where it seems like, again, I think it's like the whole thing now is, yeah, Laguna's not just a sea monster. She's like half sea monster, half like sea nymph or something like that. So there's something very like fantastical, like fairy, whimsical about her, in addition to the monstrous side. And I actually really like the contrast of that. I like that she has this like gorgeous, rainbowy, colorful aesthetic, and then she has this very kind of like monstrous, morbid side.
In the animated series, she's like friends with Toralei, so she's just attracted to bad
just
girls.
The best friend.
Yeah.
She's just the best friend, which, yeah, I feel like, you know, yeah, so it'll be interesting seeing what they do with her moving forward. There were some characters, it's interesting, there's like, everyone was all freaked out to see, well, presumably Spectra in the animated series, because there's a purple ghost, but they don't reference her by name in the episode. So, and people are like, is it Ari Hauntington again? But I don't know. We haven't heard mention of any of the Gen 2 exclusive characters yet in Gen 3. But yeah, Spectra was not in the live action movie, and not explicitly like shown or mentioned by name anyway. And there's no Venus. I was a little bummed. I love Venus. You know, I'm hoping to see her at some point in Gen 3. Something else I really liked, you know, as we mentioned, Frankie, I think, was just really beautifully done. I think the character of Frankie was just super lovable, relatable. And in addition to contributing that, you know, diversity and inclusiveness of making Frankie a non-binary character, they had a scene in the film that almost loosely implied that Frankie was on some sort of neurologically atypical spectrum. I don't remember the exact quote. It was like something along the lines of like, my brain functions differently, or I have like, you know, these, I can piece together like these portions of my thoughts, but I can't piece together. Basically what Frankie struggles with, of course, is even though they are very textbook intelligent. They're trying to figure out like social cues and kind of navigating like social scenarios and conversations, which I think very closely aligns with, certain conditions, disabilities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was very
so whether
loosely
that's
implied.
whether that's intentional or not, but I think that's definitely a nice route to take the character of Frankie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, Frankie was great comic relief. They are also very, very fun designed as well. Just the fact that they had like a cell phone and they didn't know how to use it, and they never even use it as like a normal cell phone. That was very interesting.
I actually thought that was very funny. Yeah, when they walked up to like that group of kids and it was like, "Hey, I also have a phone." Like, I thought that was cute.
Yeah, like the main three all have their own storyline and personality, which I really liked. Like sometimes it's hard to juggle so many characters, but I think of the main three, they all had their individual characterization.
Well, that pretty much summarizes our thoughts on the live action Monster High movie. We're very curious what you guys think. As with the Gen 3 dolls, we know there is a lot of passion and vigor and the different opinions behind what folks think about this and whether or not they're okay with things that have changed and things that are different. And it's okay. It's okay for us to all have different opinions. We're happy to have conversations with you all in the comments. If you watch the movie, let us know what you think of it. We cannot guarantee the comment section will be spoiler free because we're going to be having some of those conversations. We're definitely curious of your thoughts. Let us know what you might want us to discuss in the next episode of our Collector's Corner podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.